The revolution's begun. The time to stand up has come. We are the rocking of the throne. We are the rocking of the throne.
The following video is the first of 3 to appear on our new website, climate2020.us. That website is designed to convey, first, as this video explains, Bernie Sanders is the only candidate who can defeat Donald Trump. The second video was the last one published on this YouTube channel, which explains Bernie Sanders can defeat Donald Trump. And the third one on that climate2020.us website explains that Bernie Sanders is the only candidate who understands the mobilization necessary to preserve the climate. Please enjoy. My name is Victor Tiffany. I'm the co-founder of Revolt Against Plutocracy, an organization advocating for equality in political donations. You can read more about that on the democracy link up over my head. This is a video that's explaining some polling that we have found that you're not going to see discussed on MSNBC or hear it on CNN. You're not going to read about it in the New York Times or the Washington Post. I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see exactly what it is I'm talking about with this polling. This is results of a poll taken of Bernie Sanders supporters after the 2016 election. And this entire argument, this presentation that I'm showing you now, has been made to Brian Schaffner. As you see, he's the polling analyst displayed here in this Twitter feed. I've also presented this to Nate Silver, Rachel Bettkoffer, Mark Blumenthal, Bill McInturf, and a CNN analyst, Jennifer Egiesta. And none of them have come back and said, no, your thinking is flawed. Here's what's wrong with your analysis. None of them have come back and claimed we're wrong about this. So let's start with the way the Berners supported, the way the Berners voted in 2016. You can see 78% of them voted for Secretary Clinton. 12% of Sanders supporters were Sanders-Trump voters. They voted for Trump in the general election. It's 12%. 8%, you can see here, voted for other candidates. That would be Jill Stein for the most part. And that's the Bernie or bust faction that got so many headlines in 2016. And then these 2% didn't vote at all. They may have thought they were Bernie or bust, but that's not what was defined as or bust. Now, if you come down here, you can see that this 12% of the Sanders supporters voting for Trump, here's the 3 swing states that Secretary Clinton needed to win and didn't. Here's the margin of victory in red line, the Trump over Clinton, and then here's the Bernie supporters, an estimate number of Bernie supporters who voted for Trump. It's very clear they could have claimed responsibility. They didn't claim responsibility because this 12% has no organization. There's no spokesperson to claim responsibility. There's no Trump-Sanders or Sanders-Trump website. They're just like a force of nature. They're like a hurricane or a tornado. There's no controlling them. There's no putting them back in the bottle. They're like, I think of them as dark energy or dark matter. They're completely invisible until we found this poll in the aftermath of the election. Now, before I go on to current 2019 polling, I just want to go back to 2008. You can see in this poll, in the aftermath of the 2008 election, these are people who voted for Obama in the primaries. In the general election, 9% of them voted for McCain. This Twitter account doesn't think it was that high, but let's say it was 5%. Clinton supporters, 25%, we know that number is accurate because other polls indicate the same 25, 26% of Clinton supporters voted for McCain in the general election. That's about 30% of the people who voted in the primaries voted for McCain. So how did Obama win? Well, let's recall what was happening in 2008. The stock market had crashed and unemployment was starting to skyrocket. So a large swath of independent voters decided to change parties and to give the Democrats a chance to run the economy. That's very important to understand. Now, 2019 polling. Let's take a look at this. There's an Emerson poll from April of this year. You can see what's highlighted there. An Emerson College poll this month, this is from April, showed 26% of those who support Sanders in the primaries would support Trump over Elizabeth Warren in the general election. 26%. That's just one poll. Here's a Business Insider poll from November showing, this is a headline that manufactures confusion with the readers. 2/3 of Sanders supporters will support Warren if she's the nominee. But the headline should have been 1/3 of Sanders supporters would support Warren if she's the nominee. Would not support, sorry. 1/3 of Sanders supporters will not support. So this 1/3 is greater than this 26%. By the way, this is a small sample size. This 20% has a margin of error of plus minus 10%. So it's somewhere between 23% and 29%. But it's less than those who won't vote for Warren in the general, because these people would include the Bernie or Busters and the people who stayed home. So it's bound to be a larger number. But 33%, I'll come back to those polling numbers in a second. I want to just slide down here for a second and show you a little bit more what's on this. Some graphics that should come. There we go. Oh, this thing's like bouncing around, doesn't it? Come on. Oh, website does not want to cooperate with me. There we go. So that 33% who will support Warren actually goes down from there. Biden, the Bernie supporters, only less than half of Bernie supporters are satisfied with Biden. And it goes down from there. 33%, less than a third, are satisfied with Buttigieg. So Warren's numbers might be the highest. But there are other polls showing different numbers. So let's go back to Emerson College November poll. This is a head-to-head comparison of where they stand right now. You can see this looks like it's going to be a close race. Sanders is the only one in this contest who actually in this poll, who actually defeated Trump by 1 percentage point, plus or minus. That's basically a tie. Warren ties with Trump. Biden essentially ties with Trump, and then Buttigieg does the worst. That's not surprising. Slide down here, though. There's another paragraph that I want to bring your attention to. Right here. Let me read this paragraph to you. When asked if they would support the Democratic nominee for president, regardless of he or she was the first choice in the primaries, the majority of respondents said they would. 68% said very likely, 15% were somewhat likely. 93% of Buttigieg's supporters reported they were very likely to support the nominee. He has the least amount of leverage. In other words, he has the greatest amount of supporters with party loyalty, which gives him the least amount of leverage in the primaries. 80% of Warren supporters are likely to support the nominee. Only 77% of Biden supporters, which means 23% are disloyal, might vote for Trump, might vote for a third party. But the last sentence, the least likely to support the nominee of top candidates were Bernie supporters, with only 61% reporting that they're very likely. Now that that 39% who are not very likely is larger than this 1/3, the 33% here, because this is will not support the nominee versus may not support the nominee, likely. So it's different language, so you get higher percentage. But the point here is that 39% represents the highest amount of leverage of any candidate and the lowest amount of party loyalty. Those two are reciprocal relationships. So this is going to be a close election. I want to just first, before we go on to why this is going to be a close election, I just want to talk about these percentages because they can be misleading. In 2016, Bernie had 13.2 million Democrats who voted for him in the primaries. 12%, back to the Sanders-Trump voters, was about 1.58 million voters in 2016. Let's say Sanders has half the amount of support so far indicated in 2019 than he had in 2016, the actual people polling vote. This number is likely to go up once other candidates drop out. But if we start with, let's assume he's got half the amount of support that he had, that's 6.6 million. These larger percentages, 24%, remember the Sanders-Trump voters was a range of 23% to 29%. So let's just say it's 24%. That's the same number of voters about in 2016 who wouldn't vote for Hillary in the general election and voted. This is just the Sanders-Trump voters. In other words, there's still about the same number of Sanders-Trump voters as there was last time. And there are pockets of even more people who won't vote blue. This is a poll we conducted, Revolt Against Plutocracy, in early September. We let people define Bernie or bust however they wanted to. We only got two choices, so it's either vote blue if Bernie's not the nominee, or Bernie or bust. Look at these numbers. 36% will vote blue, 64% will not vote blue. Again, that's an outlier poll. Facebook is a hotbed for Bernie or bust, so it shouldn't surprise people. I just want to make it clear that this is not something that's going away. Bernie bust hasn't disappeared. It's still a phenomenon out there Democratic voters should take into account. Now, according to Brookings Institute, if you look at the economy in the post-war period since World War II, incumbent presidents have run for re-election 10 times, 7 winning and 3 losing. The winners all had strong job markets going for them. In other words, low unemployment. So let's consider what we have going on today. Low unemployment. We have high stock market value, low inflation, and high consumer confidence. The president has the economic winds at his back. And if you think this is not going to be a close race, you're deluding yourself. You're listening to pundits who are lying to you. Trump is vulnerable, but it's going to be a close race. So if you want to pick a candidate who is certain to defeat Trump, it's Bernie Sanders. He's the one with the most leverage. Any other candidate, that leverage is going to come back and sabotage them. They're going to vote directly for Trump or the Green Party candidate or Socialist Party candidate, or they're going to stay home. So in a close race like what we have now with the current economic conditions, our argument is, and again, none of those statisticians or polling analysts took an issue with this conclusion. The under current economic conditions, only Bernie Sanders is going to make those swing states go blue next year, because his leverage supporters, the Sanders-Trump voters, are going to make those swing states go red next year. Under current economic conditions, only Bernie Sanders can defeat Donald Trump. In the next video, we're going to discuss how Bernie Sanders can defeat Donald Trump next year. And in the video after that, explanation is going to be made that Bernie must defeat Trump. If the human race is to survive another 1,000 years, we have to address climate change, and that will be the subject of the 3rd video in this series. Thank you for your attention.
Revolt Against Plutocracy won't just be covering the news about the necessary revolution in the United States. Sometimes we'll be making the news. If you want to stay on top of the revolutionary actions and strategies of grassroots, genuine progressives, and our allies, please subscribe to our YouTube channel today.